Oh, hey!
Hey, what up?
I just signed up for this new class at CU, Writing and Rhetoric 1150. Do you know of anything that might be helpful?
Dude, the best thing to know about that class is authorial selves.
What's authorial selves?
Authorial selves is basically the voice you give your paper and the purpose to have your argument amplified and get your point across.
Oh, really? So each of my papers can have a different voice?
Exactly. Like if you're writing a scholarly article, you can have a scholarly hat, or if you're writing a personal narrative, it's your own voice.
Oh, okay. So I can take on many different roles in each of my writing?
Yes, of course.
So it's like wearing different hats?
Exactly! So now, since we have our hats on, we can talk about how these hats identify the credibility that gives our papers.
Really? So even though I haven't known it, I've been using authorial selves throughout my whole writing life, in my student life?
Exactly. Each paper you've done, you've had a different voice. One that you're writing toward, like if you're writing an essay to a teacher, you're writing it specifically to the teacher and giving it that a student's voice. Meanwhile, with like I said, scholarly articles, you give yourself more of a voice of a scholar because you're addressing it to a higher discourse community of scholars instead of you're writing it to a teacher.
So each of my voices, I have a different credibility. I have student credibility for my student essays, and then I have scholarly credibility for my scholarly essays. That is so cool.
Exactly, and you're also using ethos, which is, again, you're emphasizing more credibility.
That is so awesome. I can't wait to learn more.
I know. Let's go back to writing and rhetoric.
Yet, there is another hat, or authorial self, that one can take on when writing a paper in college in Rhetoric 1150. It is the scholarly self. This self is typically used in a paper to prove an argument that you have come up with on your own and should be published later on. Here you can see that research is put into the paper and is cited correctly. However, the author who has written this piece is not just reciting the information that they have gathered back to its reader, but is using it to prove their argument that they have come up with. In this article in particular, the author is trying to prove that overprotective parenting can lead to anxiety and other disorders later in life. As the student is no longer a student but is a scholar, the authorial self is being put on as a scholar. You can also see that the author is using particular wording and phrasing to communicate with their particular discourse community to prove their argument even more. As they are no longer student author, they now have put on the scholarly hat and just begun to prove their own argument rather than reciting the knowledge alone for a grade. This will be helpful in Rhetoric 1150 as you will be writing a scholarly article and trying to even maybe get it published.
So what exactly is a student authorial self? Well, it's another role or hat that can be put on by a writer throughout the writing process. When looking at a paper containing a student authorial self, it should be noted that the audience of this type of paper would always be a teacher or professor, and throughout the entire piece, the writer or student will be keeping the view of the teacher in mind. Therefore, the essay will be adapted in ways that the student is able to persuade the teacher of their argument. The goal of a student paper is to prove to their teacher that they have sufficient knowledge regarding the subject they are discussing. A great use of this type of authorial self can be seen in the award-winning essay, John Morse, A Small Price to Pay by Ben Woolman. This paper discusses Colorado State Senate President John Morse's attempts at passing stricter laws supporting gun control. As you read through his words, you can tell that this student chose his words very carefully. Using words like martyring, anathema, and zealous, it is obvious that Ben chose these words to make it appear as if his argument is more valid due to his extensive use of sophisticated vocabulary. The student authorial self Ben has chosen can also be seen through his frequent use of quotes and facts from reliable sources. He used numbers and figures to show his legitimacy in having an opinion on the topic, but then uses famous quotes of respectable people as well in order to really drive it home. Hopefully this lesson has cleared up any confusion one may have on the topic of what it means to take on a student authorial self.
If these last three examples didn't get their point across, here's another example or another hat that will give you more insight on what an authorial self is. This new hat that I'm introducing involves another type of genre of writing, which is called creative nonfiction. This is where the author uses literacy styles and techniques to create a factual, accurate narrative. Okay, for our example for the creative nonfiction, we'll be using one from Journal 2020, and it's called The Moroccan Blue. A little background information, it's about this girl who goes to this trip in Morocco, and there's problems with women's rights and equality of women and men, and gender role issues, and basically she's addressing this in her narrative to give a better perspective and awareness to this issue that's in Morocco. The nitty-gritty of what the authorial self is and what voice is given in this article. In this section, seen as over here, ding ding, we acknowledge that the author is trying to address an issue that has arisen in Morocco over women's rights. And so in this article to my left, basically the highlighted parts are the important parts of what shows the authorial self and how they're connected, and the beginning part is the narration part of the creative nonfiction, then leading to the factual information of this creative nonfiction. Voice and the authorial self shows/tells the audience here, and more of an awareness voice of they're wanting to aware you of the situation, give you better knowledge, and it's an open audience. They're addressing this to everyone. It's not like in a student authorial self where you're addressing it to a teacher, and it's not in a scholar sense where you are addressing it straight to a specific discourse community of people that are just looking for pure information, pure facts, and knowledge. This author is trying to address an issue and give better awareness. So through what now we know this authorial self in this particular paper is, we can get down to what a creative nonfiction authorial self is, and it's really one that wants to give their audience a better insight of something that they learned through their narrative and that they want to give awareness to, and again, just better knowledge and help you understand this issue and further issues and everything. So a creative nonfiction authorial self is where they want you to understand what this awareness is and stuff.
Now I really realize how important authorial selves are.
Right? I never knew how much credibility and voice it gave my papers, and I can take them to the whole new level.
I know each one really is like a different hat you put on, each paper is so different with each authorial self.
Right? And coming into writing in Rhetoric 1150 really gives me a new credibility, and I can get better grades with my different voices.